Leonis was a virginal and ugly hero who was betrayed by the disgusting humans he swore to protect. However, he was reincarnated as a powerful demon king to exact revenge on humanity. But when he saw S-rank beauties in the future, he wasted his second chance to get his fill of pleasure. In the year 428, Leonis traveled to a city with two of his fellow heroes, Arakel, the great sage, and the saintly Terrace, to fight some monsters. To quickly resolve the problem, Arakel began casting a high-level spell that also affected the humans. However, he wasn't worried, as Terrace could bring them back with her resurrection powers. Leonis couldn't bear to witness such an inhuman act, so he interrupted Arakel's spell and began killing the monsters the old-fashioned way. As the people cheered him, Arakel and Terrace watched with annoyance, and the old man remarked that Leonis would soon learn his lesson. Approximately 4 years later, Leonis was sent on a solo mission to a village to help them with a monster problem. Unfortunately, the mission turned out to be a trap, and he was captured by the kingdom's soldiers. They hung him up like a piece of meat, and when he began to struggle to free himself, they stabbed him with spears before knocking him down to bleed to death. Shortly after they left, it began to rain, and it was then that the goddess Rosalia came to him. Rosalia asked him to join her cause and offered him the chance to avenge himself against those who had betrayed him, and he agreed. Sometime after joining forces with Rosalia and becoming a demon king, Leonis returned to his castle after a battle. Rosalia was there, so he happily informed her of his victory over his enemies and told her how he had befriended Blackus. Rosalia congratulated him on his victory and their new friendship, telling him that she had a reward waiting for him. This reward was the holy sword he had wielded during his time as a hero. However, Rosalia had transformed it into a demonic blade. Before handing it over, she made it clear that he would have to fulfill a certain condition to be able to draw the sword. Years later, the war between the Demon King's army and the heroes was reaching its climax. As the battle raged on, Demon King Leonis was informed by Sherry and Blackus that they were losing and that his castle was the last remaining demonic stronghold. Upon hearing this, Leonis checked his magic crystal and was enraged to see the three heroes turning his soldiers into Legos. He wanted to go out and show them who was boss, but Blackus advised against it and reminded him of the mission entrusted to him by the goddess Rosalia. So Leonis decided to back down and wait until his reincarnation to get down to business. In the present, two girls named Reselia and Regina were playing Dora the Explorer in Leonis's castle when they stumbled upon a door that Rosalia opened. At the far end of the room stood the giant crystal in which Leonis's body lay. He continued dreaming about when Rosalia gave him the mission to find her when he reincarnated, and it was then that he opened his eyes and found Rosalia striking his crystal. She then shattered it from the inside, creating a shockwave that sent her flying. As she lay there, Leonis approached her unconscious body in an attempt to revoke her life license. However, she awoke before he could attack and asked what a brat like him was doing in a nest of monstrous voids. He thought she was hallucinating until he looked at his reflection and realized he was human, which meant something had gone wrong with his reincarnation. He was still processing his situation when Reselia began to worry about him and nearly suffocated him with her enormous breasts. She immediately let go of him, and he collapsed from hunger, so she had to share her rations with him. While he ate, she introduced herself as a knight in training from the Excalibur Academy of the 7th Assault Garden. But when she asked about him, he only gave her his name. Seeing that he couldn't provide any valuable information, she assumed he had been kidnapped by the Voids and had probably lost his memories due to the trauma. Confused, Leonis asked what a Void was, so she explained that they were enemies of humanity who suddenly appeared 64 years ago. She was still explaining when Regina radioed in to say she had encountered a Void, and suddenly the room began to shake. Immediately, Reselia tackled Leonis to the ground, and just as she had promised to protect him, an ogre-class Void crashed through the wall. Then he started firing at it, but all his efforts proved futile, so Leonis decided to show her how it was done. Unfortunately, before he could even begin cultivating aura, his feet got caught in his cloak and he fell, cursing his tiny legs. At that moment, Regina entered and began firing at the creature with her massive cannon. She promised Reselia she would take care of the Void and told her to get Leonis to safety. Reselia left with him, but as they were leaving, they were ambushed by a Wyvern-class Void. Reselia told Leonis to run and charged at him, but instead of running away, Leonis decided to prove he wasn't useless. But before he could complete his spell, Reselia pushed him, and instead, he took a blow. When Leonis went to see her, memories of the day he died and was brought back by the goddess Rosalia flooded his mind. They were soon surrounded by more Voids, but thanks to his powers, the Voids couldn't touch them. He then summoned his staff and eliminated the Voids using a gravity and fire spell, after which he healed Reselia. When the girl finally awoke, she hugged Leonis and asked him how he had been saved from his appointment with the Grim Reaper. He then explained that he had used his magic to heal her. Unfamiliar with the concept of magic, Reselia assumed he was talking about using his sacred sword, which was something that had manifested in the form of weapons in humans during that time and was used to fight the Voids. She told him that she hadn't yet manifested her holy sword, but said that Regina had one, which was what she had used against the Void earlier. Speaking of Regina, the girl appeared a few moments later, and they all left the ruins together. Outside, Regina asked about Leonis, so Reselia explained that he had been kidnapped by the Voids and couldn't remember anything but his name. As they rode toward the city, Regina introduced herself herself as Rhyselia's handmaiden. Rhyselia then revealed to the astonished Leonis that the city was called the 7th Assault Garden. Looking at the city brought back memories to Rhyselia's mind, and she remembered what had happened 6 years ago. She used to live in the 3rd Assault Garden, but it was attacked by a large swarm of voids, and while the knights tried to defend the city, she, Regina, and some refugees hid in a bunker. Despite her fear, young Rhyselia had assured Regina that everything would be alright in the morning because her family was fighting the voids. Unfortunately, when it was all over and they were allowed out of the bunker, Rhyselia learned that her entire family had perished. Back in the present, Leonis and the girls arrived in the city, and as she looked around in awe, Regina switched into tour guide mode. She explained that the city was a megaship designed to conquer and destroy void colonies. While telling her more about their new home, Rhyselia made a call and informed them that she had sent her research data. She also told the person about Leonis, mentioning that she possessed a holy sword, which shocked Regina. Regina then asked about it after Rhyselia ended the call. The latter explained that Leonis had used his holy sword to heal her in the ruins, and said that this qualified him to enroll at the Excalibur Academy. Since Leonis had no idea what they were discussing, Rhyselia explained that the academy was an educational institution where those who possessed holy swords were trained to become holy knights. She told him she would enroll him, and added that he would live in the dormitories like all the other students. When she finished speaking, Regina said goodbye to them, and after she left, Rhyselia instructed Leonis to go through a door to take an exam, as was the protocol for all those joining the ship for the first time. She promised to meet him on the other side, and as soon as she left, he went to the bathroom. There, he lamented that his plans for world domination had been thwarted by his new body, which prevented him from using his powers properly. He then summoned Sherry and Blackas and told them he wanted them to conduct reconnaissance on the humans. He said they should find out everything they could about their armed forces, capabilities, and power, but warned them not to use their powers, as this updated version of humans was unfamiliar with magic. Shortly after they parted ways, Leonis went through the door he was supposed to pass through and had to suppress his mana so as not to attract attention. After collecting his new ID, he exited through the other side, and Rhyselia took the card to schedule his holy sword consultation, which, she explained, was a test to assess a person's holy sword properties before they could fully enroll at the academy. Having done this, they entered the city, and Leonis was astonished by the sheer size of the defensive building, which made his so-called fortress look like a Lego set. As Rhyselia gave him a tour, she suddenly felt dizzy and nearly collapsed, but assured Leonis she was fine, just tired. Before continuing on their way, she noticed some students training at the outdoor training center, and remarked that she would return after resting to do the same. When she mentioned again her lack of a holy sword, Leonis wondered if she had been given preferential treatment, as it made no sense to him that someone without a holy sword would be enrolled in an academy built for those who possessed them. On their way to the dormitory, they ran into Musel, a pompous jerk who thought he was the heartthrob of his time because he had somehow acquired a harem. He started mocking Rhyselia, and she tried to ignore him since talking to him might lower her IQ, but this idiot blocked her path. He told her to join his platoon since she desperately wanted to be a knight, but she refused, saying she didn't associate with fools. When she tried to pass him, he grabbed her hair, which angered Leonis. So he struck the disrespectful fool with a spell and forced him to his knees. Then he told Musel that if he ever touched Rhyselia with his filthy hands again, he would cut off his crumpled marbles and feed them to him. Terrified, Musel summoned his holy sword and tried to use it against Leonis, but before he could, Elphine arrived and warned him. She reminded him that it was against school rules to use holy swords for personal fights, and threatened to send footage of the incident to the administration if he didn't leave. After he complied, Elphine introduced herself to Leonis as Rhyselia's platoon's data analyst and scanned his body to get his measurements. Just as she told Rhyselia she would have some clothes ready for Leonis, Rhyselia felt dizzy again and had to lean against a tree to steady herself. Later, in the dormitory, while Leonis was in the bathroom, Rhyselia came in, and as she began to help him, she asked if he would like to join her platoon, even though they were the academy's losers. Intrigued, Leonis asked her why she wanted to become a knight if she didn't have a holy sword, and she replied that it was because she wanted to be like her role model and protect those she loved. The next moment, she suddenly collapsed and couldn't move. Leonis touched her thigh and activated the magic seal that had appeared after he healed her in the ruins. Fangs immediately grew and began sucking on it. When he finally withdrew, he revealed that he hadn't healed her at all and that she was still dead. The following day, when Rhyselia awoke to find herself in her bed, Leonis explained that he had brought her there with his magic. This made her wonder who he was, so he told her that he was the reincarnation of the greatest sorcerer who had ever lived. Since she didn't understand the concept of magic or sorcerers, he explained that in the past, magic was something people possessed, just as they possessed holy swords in this era. Then he revealed that he had resurrected her as a vampire queen and said that he had drunk her blood because his mana had been depleted and he needed her blood to replenish his own. Rhyselia struggled to accept her new identity, but she maintained her composure and told Leonis about her past. She revealed that she was an orphan, having lost her family during the attack and been taken in by the academy. As she came from a long line of holy knights, she had been training hard to accelerate the awakening of her holy sword. However, this had not yet happened. She expressed her concern about not being able to obtain one now that she was dead, dead, but Leonis told her not to worry about it, saying that even if she didn't get one, it wouldn't matter because she had become stronger than before. Later that day, they went to the cafeteria, and Leonis learned that all the fortune he possessed was now worthless. This was because the only form of payment accepted now was alchemically forged silver, not the gold he had hidden away. He was still trying to come to terms with his newfound ruin when his attention was drawn to Sakuya, who had just entered the cafeteria. She was with two men who were pestering her to pay what she owed, and when she told them she was broke, they suggested she pay by taking off her clothes. Annoyed, she pulled out a wooden sword and knocked them to their knees, before threatening to become samurai the next time they dared to act like uncivilized pigs toward her. After they fled, Riselia and Leonis approached. Her and Riselia introduced them, after which she bought them lunch. While they ate, Leonis inquired about Sakuya's uniform, which seemed to belong to another era. Sakuya explained that it was the traditional dress of her homeland, Sakura Orchid, and said she wore it as a tribute to them since the voids had wiped them all off the face of the earth. After lunch, Riselia took Leonis to her research, and the instructor asked him to demonstrate his sacred sword. Playing along, Leonis summoned his staff, so the woman asked him to show her what it could do. As she began preparing a simulation to adjust its power, Leonis leveled up the void simulators in front of him. Impressed and surprised by how well his tool worked, she decided to prepare an alternative simulation. However, the brainless Musel appeared at that moment with his mindless harem in tow and challenged Leonis to a duel. Grateful for the opportunity to finally show everyone why he was the protagonist, Leonis agreed. As Musel prepared for the fight, his girls did the same, prompting Riselia to point out the unfairness of the situation. Leonis assured Riselia that he didn't care, but she refused to listen and insisted on fighting alongside him. Hearing this, Musel said that if they lost, he would join their platoon, and Leonis told him that if they won, he would never go near Riselia again. Riselia then selected an ordinary sword, and after the rules of combat were explained and they were signaled to begin, she attacked the girls. While she dealt with two of them, Musel ordered another to take down Leonis, but the Demon King blocked her attacks using shadows and then used the same shadows to knock her down. Seeing this, Riselia told Musel to stop hiding behind the girls like a little coward and fight like a real man. This statement caused the students watching the match to start murmuring, which unsettled Musel because he couldn't afford to let his reputation be tarnished. At that moment, Regina rushed into the training arena and was surprised to find Riselia fighting. But Riselia didn't even notice her friend, as she was too busy knocking out Musel's girls. After defeating the last girl, she went after Musel, but before she could take him down, he used his holy sword to hold her in place. The coward then tried to go after Leonis, believing him to be nothing more than a weakling like himself. However, before Leonis could prove him wrong, Riselia manifested her holy sword and broke free from Musel's control. Immediately, she charged at Musel, and before he knew what was happening, she had destroyed his holy sword. As she pointed her sword at him, Musel accepted his defeat, and Regina rushed to Riselia to congratulate her on awakening her holy sword. Later, in her bedroom, Riselia thanked Leonis, believing that her holy sword had awakened because of him, but he told her not to thank him. He then explained that it was her instincts as a subordinate to protect her master that had compelled her holy sword to awaken. Even so, Riselia thanked him and promised to protect him with her life, after which she asked him to help her train so she could become stronger. After dinner, Leonis visited Elfine to provide her biographical data to the Academy's network. He asked her about her holy sword, the Witch's Eye, which she used to gather and analyze data rather than fight. Elfine shared that, after witnessing the deaths of two teammates in her previous platoon while acting as the main attacker, her sword lost its ability to fight. She then joined Riselia's platoon and became her analyst. After her account, she finished uploading Leonis's data, and he asked if he could get a copy of the map he saw on his computer screen. She gave him a tablet with the map and, after explaining how it worked, let him go. Leonis returned to Riselia's room and, while looking at the map, noticed correlations between the locations where he had fought heroes in the past and the locations of the void outbreaks. He then summoned Blackus and briefed him on what he had learned so far about the ship and how it functioned. When Blackus mentioned that the vessel was powered by a large mana crystal, Leonis said he wanted to get his hands on it, as it would be beneficial to his cause. After Blackus left, Sherry appeared and informed him that no one in the city knew about him or the war that had occurred 1,000 years prior. This led Leonis to suspect that someone had manipulated history, which didn't surprise him much, as he always knew humans were suspects. At the same time, a team investigating void activity beneath the ship encountered a plant-like creature that attached itself to one of the anchor chains and attacked them. The next day, Leonis awoke and, while recalling his mission, felt a slight pain in his neck and realized Riselia had bitten him while he slept. He immediately went to her room and forced her to wake using his powers. Surprised, Riselia asked how he had commanded her body to move, and he explained that the seal on his body allowed him to force her to do his bidding. Being rather dirty-minded, Riselia asked if he could also force her to do inappropriate things with him, and he replied that he preferred a wormhole to an icy one. She then asked why she had sucked him dry without waking him up so he would know, and she apologized, explaining that his urge had been too much for her to bear. Later, at the military command center, a meeting was held, and all the city's high command was present. They were shown the last material sent by the missing team team before they were attacked, and they wondered aloud whether what attacked them was a Void Lord or a mutant. This statement caused panic among the men, as they all knew that the appearance of a Void Lord would mean doom for the city. Their opinions were divided on what course of action to take, so the acting commander ordered a new investigation of the route to determine what it really was. Later that day, while Leonis and Riselia were training, Leonis had Riselia fight his skeletal army, and after the training, she offered to buy him lunch as a thank you. Elsewhere in the city, Sherry got a job at a restaurant, but as a maid, she was so bad at kitchen duties that her boss sent her to sweep the front of the shop. Just as she was about to leave, she spotted Leonis and Riselia buying donuts and quickly hid. From her hiding place, she muttered to herself how much she hated that Leonis was hanging out with a human instead of her. Curious to know why Riselia was so special to Leonis, Sherry decided to follow them after they left. A short time later, Riselia arrived in front of the restaurant she had told Leonis about. Some children came out of the restaurant to greet them, and Riselia explained that they were orphans who lived there. As they went inside, one of the boys lifted Riselia's skirt, and Leonis decided to intervene and teach the brat a lesson. However, he stopped because Riselia laughed and took it as a joke. At that moment, the owner came downstairs and Riselia made the necessary introductions. When the orphans heard that Leonis possessed a holy sword, they begged him to show it to them. Unfamiliar with this kind of attention, Leonis didn't know how to react, but fortunately, Riselia diverted his attention by offering the orphans donuts. Meanwhile, the second team sent to investigate the root void discovered that it was no longer attached to the anchor. This puzzled them, but Elfine's sensors detected vibrations beneath the city. Following this, their superiors were informed about the missing void, which caused them concern. To help them understand what had happened, they summoned Elfine to brief them on her findings. The girl gave them a detailed report of her discoveries and stated that there was evidence of void activity on the ship. The council had difficulty believing her claims and argued that the ship's defenses were unavoidable. However, the scientists supported her findings, noting that they had received the same readings. This led the council to wonder how the void had managed to enter the vessel, to which they were informed that it had likely slipped through openings in the anchor chain. Still incredulous, the board chairman asked why they hadn't yet located the void, and Elfine explained that it was because the void had concentrated its presence. The man called her a liar and said that voids were dumb beasts, making it impossible for them to possess any intelligence. Elfine was about to explain the concept of evolution to the pea-brained man when an alarm sounded and reports came in of the void's location from the root. A team was immediately dispatched to destroy it, but unfortunately for them, the root fought back. During the chaos, the live feed to the command center was cut off, and when it returned, they were informed that the void had escaped. Hoping to find its whereabouts, they began scanning the ship, and Elfine deduced that the void was heading for the power plant where the magic crystal was located. She said that if they didn't stop it, a stampede would be triggered, and they would have a repeat of what happened in the 3rd Assault Guard. The acting commander immediately ordered troops to be sent to protect the power plant. Unfortunately, by the time they arrived, the void had already attached itself to the monocrystals, leaving the troops unable to take any action. With no other option, the acting commander declared the ship would be converted to fortress mode. He ordered the evacuation of all civilians to shelters, while military personnel prepared for the impending stampede. Immediately, everyone sprang into action just as the void took complete control of the power plant. When evacuation alarms blared throughout the city, Riselia and Leonis rushed outside the restaurant to see what was happening. Riselia nearly fainted from shock when she saw portals open and voids flooding into the city. She watched in disbelief as the city transformed into a massive weapon, firing at the voids. Elsewhere in the city, Riselia's platoon members helped citizens evacuate to shelters. However, Regina was worried about Riselia and asked Elfine if she had been able to contact her yet. Elfine said no, explaining that communications weren't working, but assured Regina that Riselia would be fine. She asked her to focus on her current mission, and shortly after, everyone joined the fight. As soon as she disappeared inside the restaurant, Sherry materialized before Leonis, who found it strange that she had appeared unsummoned. However, he was pleased that she had come and ordered her to go help Elfine, Regina, and Sakuya. Sherry didn't want to go and told him she preferred to stay by his side and protect him, but Leonis told her he didn't like clingy girls and demanded that she do as he ordered. Shortly after leaving, Leonis noticed the voids had reached that part of the city and informed Riselia. He then ordered everyone to stay inside the restaurant, promising that he and Riselia would protect them from the voids. When the voids attacked, Riselia charged at some and beheaded them, while Leonis used fire magic to burn the rest. As more portals opened around the city, allowing more voids to enter, Sakuya and Regina fought off some ogre-class and wyvern-class voids. Things continued to go well until a Hydra-class void fell into the middle of the city, bringing several dragon-class voids with it. When they began destroying the cannons, Leonis decided it was time to take decisive action and use a high-level spell. He asked Riselia to deal with the smaller voids, and as he began chanting the spell to defeat the dragon, he realized he was doing too much to save a human city. However, she pushed those thoughts aside and completed the spell, and fireballs began raining down on the voids. When Riselia was nearly struck, she ordered her to stay still and assured her that as long as she didn't move, she would be fine. The firestorm soon ended, but the dragon remained standing and even tried to roast Riselia, but she dodged before it could. The next next moment, Blackus emerged from the shadows and attacked the dragon. While Blackus was busy trying to shake it off, Leonis began to chant again. This time, his spell was powerful enough and destroyed the dragon once and for all, shocking Reselia. As she moved toward him, the ground opened up and the Void Lord's roots ensnared her. Leonis tried to follow her, but the Void Lord stopped him by sending more roots to block his path. The roots then took the form of a face belonging to Arakel, revealing him as the one responsible for the chaos. Leonis attacked Arakel with a fire spell, but the new and improved Swamp Thing managed to escape and crawled back to the ground. Since he had taken Reselia with him, Leonis tried to pursue them, but Blackus emerged from the shadows and stopped him, letting him know that the orphans and their owner were watching him. Leonis then approached the group and told them to go back inside, but they refused and begged him to save Reselia. He assured them he would, and before embarking on their rescue mission, he erected a magical barrier around the building and summoned 2 skeletons, ordering them to guard the place. After returning to Blackus, the 2 prepared to go after Arakel, but stopped when Leonis heard Elfine's voice coming from Reselia's earrings, which had fallen off as she was being dragged. Picking them up, he told Elfine what had happened to Reselia and asked her to track her location using her holy sword so they could go and find her. Elfine refused his request, saying it was madness for an inexperienced rookie like him to embark on such a dangerous mission. She told him to come to where she and the others were and said she would contact the platoon in charge of that district so they could search for Reselia. Leonis argued that it would be too late by then and begged her to track Reselia's biosignature, which she agreed to do. A few seconds later, she told Leonis that Reselia was at the power plant, for which he thanked her. The moment she cut off communication, Regina called Elfine and told her to stand aside. Unfortunately, it was already too late, and just as Elfine was about to be eliminated, Sherry decapitated the Void with her whip. The girls were shocked and began wondering what kind of glitch in the Matrix had occurred, but they never realized the truth because Sherry hid from them and continued eating her donuts. Meanwhile, Leonis and Blackus were heading to the power plant, and Blackus asked Leonis why he had sent Sherry to help the girls. Leonis claimed it was because the girls were useful and he didn't want anything bad to happen to them. Blackus knew he was acting like Pinocchio, so he asked why he'd put up a barrier around the restaurant and left guards to protect it. Realizing he'd been trapped, Leonis admitted he'd grown fond of humans, which didn't surprise Blackus since he knew his friend was a big softie. When they arrived at the central facility, they discovered Arakel had fused with the monocrystal and was draining its energy. Leonis tried to force him out of the crystal by setting it on fire, but it regenerated in seconds. Then it demanded to know how Leonis was still alive, and Leonis told him it was because he'd sealed his soul. Arakel called him a fool and said his resurrection would be in vain because the world was about to be rebuilt along with the Void Star. His words made no sense to either Leonis or Blackus, so Arakel laughed and revealed that he had been chosen to be the bearer of good tidings, another statement that made no sense to the Demon King. And just as he was about to tell him to shut his moss-infested mouth, miniature heads appeared around Arakel's vans. They soon began to harmonize a melody that made Leonis realize that the heads were the priests of the holy order that Arakel had assimilated. It wasn't long after this revelation that Arakel began attacking Leonis and Blackus, but they evaded his roots and fought back. Unfortunately, they were at a disadvantage because Arakel had claimed the entire place as his domain and was using the extra heads to cast multiple spells at once. As they fought, Reselia tried to free herself from the roots that bound her, but all she managed to do was cut herself. Refusing to give up, she summoned her holy sword, and as she attempted to maneuver the blade to sever the roots, Leonis fought his way through Arakel's roots and spells, trying to reach her. Fortunately, some of her vampiric powers activated, and using her blood, she created miniature blades to cut through her bonds. This allowed Leonis to locate her, and the next moment, he fired a pendant infused with her blood into her chest. Instantly, Reselia's power levels surged, allowing her to break free from her restraints as a pair of blood wings sprouted from her body. When Reselia spotted Leonis, she rushed toward him, nearly causing them both to fall, but thankfully he managed to avoid her fall and land them safely on a ledge. He praised Reselia for finally activating her powers, and she thanked him for the mana boost he provided. Arakel flew into a rage at the sight, and, being someone who could never accept defeat, vowed to make Leonis pay. He then began chanting a spell, and, with the priest backing him up, he knew it would be massive. Blackus recognized the spell he was chanting and deduced that when it was finished, a second, huge explosion would follow. To thwart his plans, Leonis asked Reselia to keep Arakel occupied and give him time to prepare something to defeat the Great Sage. As she began fighting the roots, Blackus asked Leonis what his plan was, and the Demon King replied that he would use his demonic sword. Blackus reminded him of Reselia's warning about the sword, but Leonis confidently asserted that he knew what he was doing. As he drew the sword, he declared that the 7th Assault Garden now belonged to him, since the condition for wielding the sword was his willingness to protect what was his. The sword acknowledged Leonis's decision, and when Arakel saw it, he demanded to know where he had obtained it. Leonis ignored his question and said it was good that he still felt fear, but Arakel told him that it didn't matter what he did because it was impossible to change the world's calamitous fate. Leonis assured him that he would conquer that fate and then raised his sword to deliver a powerful slash, which he called Ragnar Lost. With this, Arakel was defeated, and the stampede began to subside. However, the humans assumed that the Lord of the Void had died because the power plant had suffered a meltdown and he had been trapped inside. Days after the stampede, the fourth princess and her people boarded a ship bound for the seventh, a salt garden, because the princess wanted to see how her subjects were doing after surviving the stampede. Back at the seventh assault garden, Leonis decided to do some investigating by visiting the city vault. When he arrived, the spirit in charge denied him entry because he needed authorization from the administrative office to access the vault. The gods of the plot then sent him an assistant in the form of Regina, who slipped up behind him and covered his eyes. Leonis easily guessed who she was, which led him to remark that he should have played along a little longer so he could have enjoyed the sensation of her breasts against his back. Leonis scolded her for trying to arouse him and asked how she had found him if he hadn't told anyone where he was going. The girl assured him that he was the last person she would want to harass and explained that she had seen him while passing by. She asked him what he had come there to do, and he lied, saying he had come to investigate an ancient language written all over the ruins. Believing his lie, Regina offered to help him, and as he watched in confusion, she approached the spirit and forced it to let her in. His confusion soon turned to amazement, and when he asked how she had done it, Regina told him it was a secret. As they ventured into the vault, their phones rang simultaneously, so they checked to see what the message was. It turned out to be an invitation to the recognition ceremony scheduled to take place on the princess's ship, as their platoon was among those receiving the honor for their role during the stampede. At that moment, Riselia called Leonis, and they made plans to meet at the port later. After hanging up, Leonis asked Regina to go ahead without him, but she told him she wouldn't be attending the ceremony and then left. Meanwhile, inside the demi-human conservation area, some of them plotted to kidnap the princess and negotiate with the Empire to free their imprisoned relatives. As they made their plans, Elsa asked their leader, Bazid, if it was wise to lead them on such a dangerous mission when they knew the humans possessed holy swords. The person who answered her question was Shira, who materialized out of nowhere and joined their conversation. She told Elsa she didn't need to worry because she had a solid plan to get rid of the problem. Before the group could even begin to question who she was and why she thought that, she convinced them to let her join them and proposed a different idea. Her plan was to hijack the ship along with the princess and everyone on board, and then force her to take them to the capital, where negotiations would begin. Accepting her crazy idea, they asked her what her plan was to outwit the Holy Knights. The Dark Elf revealed that her goddess had given her the ability to grant them powers, rivaling those of a holy sword, and presented them with a demonic blade. As the leader, Bazid was the first to receive a demonic sword, and as he tested his new blade, the group was awestruck. Shira promised to grant them all similar weapons, but demanded in return that they hand over all the holy swordsmen so she could sacrifice them to the goddess, and they agreed. Later that day, when Leonis arrived at the port, he strolled around and visited some stalls so he could buy a gift for Riselia. He deluded himself into thinking he was doing it to reward her for being a good servant, not because he had grown fond of her. As he headed to the ship, the princess came out on deck to greet her subjects, and he told himself that this was a good tactic for keeping people loyal. Riselia and the others soon arrived, and after Leonis approached them, he gave Riselia the gift he had bought her. Riselia was very pleased with the keychain, but she teased him, saying it wouldn't grow up to be a certified demon king, which surprised him since he didn't think Riselia could be that kind of smooth talker. She then thanked him, and after putting the gift away, said it was time to board. But before they could, Riselia's self-proclaimed nemesis, Fenris, approached them. Like every mean girl cliche ever written, Fenris began to boast and mock Riselia and her friends. She asked them if they had taken a wrong turn on their way to the losers' award ceremony, and Riselia replied that they had also been invited to the award ceremony. This silenced the girl, but not for long. Just as she seemed about to say something to provoke Riselia, Elphine spoke up and told her to back off. Out of respect for Elphine, Fenris agreed to withdraw, but she refused to leave without having the last word. So she condescendingly congratulated Riselia on awakening her holy sword. As she walked away, Leonis asked her who she was, and Riselia told him that she was the reason blondes had such a bad reputation. Meanwhile, the demi-humans stormed the ship and stole the faces of the guards they had killed so they could blend in. While waiting for the princess to appear, Leonis sat on one of the lounge chairs by the pool, reading the text he had retrieved from the vault. This led him to believe that he had been deliberately erased from history, and he wanted to find out why. Shortly after, as the princess walked toward the banquet hall, the demi-humans made their move. After disposing of her guards, they began threatening her to come with them, at which point the princess released her pet spirit. Inside the banquet hall, the guests were gathered by Elsa's team, and when Fenris tried to act tough, Elsa fired a warning shot and vowed that the next one would be aimed at someone's head. Fenris had no choice but to sheathe his holy sword. However, to ensure no one else did the same, the elder elf threw an apple bomb and warned that if they did anything, he would detonate it. Then everyone lined up and handed over their phones and communication devices. The civilians were then separated from Riselia and the others, so they asked the demi-humans what they wanted. Gerda revealed that they wanted the Empire to release their relatives, and Fenris told them that the crown didn't negotiate with terrorists, which angered him. Seeing this, Elsa reminded him that they shouldn't harm them, so he backed away. When he started complaining that he didn't understand why a goddess needed so so many sacrifices, Leonis became curious and decided to investigate, then let Reselia know that he was about to summon an avatar. After he slipped away using his shadows, the girls huddled together so the demi-humans wouldn't notice he was missing. On the ship's bridge, Sierra used artificial spirits to force the princess to activate the ship's engine and set a course for a void reach. Surprised, Bazid said she was deviating from the plan and insisted the princess change course, but Shira said she didn't care about his plans at all. She then revealed that she had used them for her own purposes, and when Bazid tried to attack her, she manipulated her demonic sword and burned him alive. Fearing for her life, Gerda remained silent and agreed to do whatever Sierra wanted. Meanwhile, outside, Regina found the princess's pet spirit, and when she touched the spirit, she heard the princess's voice calling for help. Regina immediately grabbed the spirit and jumped aboard the ship just before it sailed away from the harbor. In the corridor, she bumped into Leonis, and when he questioned her presence on the ship, she said she had come because her little sister was in danger. To provide context, she revealed that she was actually the fourth princess of the Empire. However, she had been sidelined due to the circumstances surrounding her birth. It turned out that on the night she was born, the Red Star, which the people nicknamed the Scarlet Calamity, had been in the sky. Since it was considered a bad omen for royalty to be born when the star was present, the king ordered it to be sent back to the sky. Fortunately, Resilia's grandfather was there at the key time, so he convinced the king to let the baby live and then took her back home with him. There, she handed her over to Resilia's father, who took her into his home and raised her alongside Reselia as his servant to keep her identity a secret. However, the only people who knew her true identity besides Reselia's family were members of her platoon. Realizing her story was getting drawn out, Regina said she had found her sister's pet spirit and learned from it about the situation aboard the ship. It turned out that all members of the royal family could connect with spirits, which explained how she had managed to manipulate the owl in the vault. Leonis then told her that he had slipped out of the banquet hall unnoticed to search for the princess and asked her to join him. Regina readily accepted the offer and appeased the spirit so it could guide them to the princess. Back in the banquet hall, Elphine informed Reselia that she would analyze the bomb's characteristics using one of her drones hidden behind the chandelier. She said the elf's wand was the bomb's detonator and asked Reselia to buy her time to delay its activation. To grant her request, Reselia pierced her finger with a fork, enabling her to use her vampire powers. Meanwhile, when Leonis and Regina reached the bridge, it was deserted, and Regina realized they couldn't steer the ship off course because all the controls had been shut down. Leonis suggested she approach the princess using the spirit, but Regina refused, saying that if she did, her identity would be revealed. The Demon King told her as kindly as possible that unless she was a founding member of the Justice League, no one would care if her identity were revealed. Realizing he was right about her insignificance, Regina approached the princess and asked for her whereabouts. The girl told her they were heading to the flight deck, so Regina told her help was on the way, but the princess begged her to prioritize changing the ship's course. She directed her to the ship's lower deck where the monitoring system was located and told her to enter the access code she had provided to regain control of the ship. After severing the connection, Regina told Leonis where the princess was, so he jumped out the window to shorten the time it would take him to reach her. Back in the banquet hall, Reselia used her demon blood art to create a rope that she connected to the old elf's wand. Just as she was about to give Elphine the go-ahead to block the signal, Fenris decided to see what it felt like to be the center of attention. She started mocking the demi-humans, which caused Gerda to become annoyed and start yelling at her. The only reason she stopped was because Sakuya, who had broken free and was eating, broke a plate. Immediately, Gerda pointed her gun at her, but Elsa warned her to be careful because she could tell Sakuya was from Sakura Orchid. It was no secret that the Sakura Orchid were wild and thrill-seeking, getting what they wanted from every fight they got involved in. Hating that the attention had been diverted from her, Fenris challenged Gerda to a fight, and when he attacked her, she went into Kung Fu Panda mode on him. With everyone distracted by the fight, Reselia and Elphine put their plan into action and disarmed the old elf. Realizing her trump card was gone, Elsa tried to cling to what remained of her control by threatening them with her weapon. The next moment, Sakuya struck her with the hilt of his sword, and she fainted. Fenris then activated his sacred sword, which transformed into a pack of ice wolves, and ordered them to attack Gerda. With the elf as her only remaining opponent, Reselia quickly knocked him out and then scolded Fenris for nearly jeopardizing her plan with his strong outburst. After freeing all the hostages, Reselia tried to call Leonis, but couldn't reach him. She was still trying to contact him when the Voids began boarding the ship, so Fenris and Sakuya started fighting them off. Elphine and Reselia began helping the civilians leave the room, and while they were doing this, Leonis contacted Reselia using the keyring he had given her. He told her to go help Regina, but Reselia explained that she was needed in the banquet hall by the Voids. Leonie assured her that he had taken steps to address the Void situation, so he left Elphine in charge of crowd control and went to find Regina. The girls did their best to keep the Voids at bay, but things escalated when a Void nicknamed the Brain Eater appeared. Sakuya then instructed the others to head to the other room and protect the people, while she stayed behind to fight Mr. Octopus. As soon as they followed her instructions, Sakuya unleashed a secret technique that transformed her holy sword into a demonic blade. At the same time, Regina and Reselia reached the lower deck, and after managing to eliminate the Voids there, Regina Regina went to take care of what she needed to do while Reselia stood guard. Outside, Shira forced the princess onto the airship and left poor Gerda to die at the hands of the voids. However, when Shira tried to fly out of the ship and escape, Leonis pinned the aircraft to the spot using his shadows. Inside the hall, Sherry helped the girls kill the remaining voids, leaving them confused once again as they wondered who had aided them. In the main hall, a weary Sakuya rested after having killed Squidward's evil twin. Back outside, Shira confronted Leonis and scoffed in disbelief when he introduced himself as a demon king. She told him he was delusional, but Leonis made her eat her words by countering the spell she tried to cast on him. He then bound her with his shadows and demanded she tell him the name of the goddess she served. Before Shira could say anything, her body began to tremble, and a sword forced its way out of her body. Leonis recognized the sword as that of the Demon King's slayer, the evil destroying blade Zolgstar, and wondered how it had gotten there. Before his very eyes, the sword transformed and opened portals to bring more voids onto the deck. He tried to destroy the sword, but it still possessed the powers it had when it was a holy blade, so it countered Leonis' spell. Before he could think of another way to destroy it, it teleported away and reappeared behind Leonis, just as the Demon King noticed the princess was in danger. Leonis eliminated the voids, but he couldn't do the same to the sword. Regina, who had been watching them from the camera on deck, began controlling the weapons and opened fire on the voids and the sword. Unfortunately, that did nothing against the sword, so she started launching missiles at it, and surprisingly, Reselia was blasted away by one of the missiles like a cat in a box. After she landed in Leonis' arms, he ordered her to take on the voids while he dealt with the sword. He then drew his demonic sword and destroyed the corrupted sword using Ragnar Lost. Later, when it was all over, the princess thanked Reselia, Elfine, Sakuya, and Fenris for saving her and everyone else on the ship. When she asked about Regina and Leonis, Reselia explained why they were absent from the meeting. The princess expressed her sadness at not having the opportunity to thank them, but Reselia assured her that it wouldn't be held against her, and then told the princess that Regina wished her a bright and happy future. Meanwhile, Leonis was lying in bed in the bedroom because using the demon sword had depleted his mana. Regina entered the room to check on him, and he assured her that he would be fine after some rest. The girl knew he would be, but she wanted to show her gratitude for his help, so she kissed him and told him to keep it a secret. Days later, while the remaining members of the rebel demi-human group were being pursued by the Holy Knights, Leonis came to their rescue. Feeling like Medusa, he turned the knights to stone and then revealed himself in the most theatrical way possible, concealing his face behind a mask. He forced the confused demi-humans to kneel and introduced himself as the Demon King, Zolvadis. After his introduction, he gave them two choices: either pledge their loyalty to him or be captured by the knights. The choice was obvious, so the demi-humans decided to take their chances with the masked psychopath and pledged their allegiance to him. Just as he opened a passage leading to the hidden labyrinth he had created for them, his phone rang. The caller was Reselia, and she wanted to know where he was. Leonis hung up quickly before his identity could be revealed and then proceeded to make a dramatic exit, leaving his new subjects confused. It turned out that Reselia had gone to Leonis' room to find him, but had instead found Sherry sweeping the floor. Believing his eyes were playing tricks on him, he closed the door, and when he opened it again, the maid was gone. Shortly after, Leonis appeared in her dormitory, and after putting away his cloak and mask, ventured out to find Reselia. He found the girl getting dressed with the door wide open and quickly looked away. Unfortunately for them, the writers had decided this moment of fan service was necessary. There was a plot twist, so Regina entered and, when she saw them, asked if she needed to call the authorities, but they assured her it was all a misunderstanding. After Reselia got dressed, they sat down to eat the sandwiches Regina had brought, and their conversation soon turned to the rumors that her dormitory was haunted. This was because people had been seeing Blackus and Sherry hanging around the area. Reselia immediately agreed and told them she had seen the maid sweeping Leonis' room. This prompted Leonis to make a mental note to tell his people they were bad at keeping a low profile. Reselia then asked Leonis where he had gone that morning, and he lied, saying they had gone to train to prepare for their practice match later that day. The girls told him it was a wise decision and that they had to do their best if they wanted to beat Fenris's platoon and move up in rank. A few hours later, the practice match began, and Reselia and Leonis worked together to capture one of the flags belonging to the Fenris platoon. Elfine had the important duty of protecting her platoon's main flag while also watching over her team. She and Regina worked well together, but Sakuya got a little too carried away and started chasing the Fenris ice wolves. From the stands, the instructor noticed Platoon 18's strategy and informed the council members that it was a promising plan. However, she added that if they didn't execute it correctly, they risked losing the match. At that moment, an ice wolf charged at Reselia, and when she tried to defend herself, another wolf approached from behind and bit her leg. Leonis quickly destroyed the wolf, but the ice burn on Reselia's leg lingered and was painful. Fenris revealed his true identity and laughed at Reselia for falling into his trap. However, Reselia told him to stop acting so arrogantly and questioned why Fenris, as captain, was protecting a subflag. Fenris replied that he wanted the opportunity to fight Reselia. Feeling confident, he revealed his platoon's strategy, which made Reselia realize that they had been playing Fenris's game all along. Leonis admired the girl's strategic thinking, yet he wished she would stop talking for once. as the sound of her voice was as annoying as a mosquito. Tuning back to her barking session, he heard her declare victory before sparring with her ice wolves. Her teammate attempted to engage Leonis, but he knocked her out and turned his attention back to Reselia and Fenris's fight. Fenris pushed Reselia against a tree and held her there with ice, but Reselia managed to break free and charged at Fenris, knocking her down. He pulled her down and stood over her with his sword. Shocked, Fenris fainted, and a few minutes later, her platoon's main flag was captured, securing victory for Reselia's platoon. That night, in an undisclosed location, Nephekes, Sierra's partner, wondered how she had died while feeding sacred swords to a monocrystal. It turned out she had been collecting sacred swords like Pokemon cards and bringing them to him. She then inserted them into the monocrystal as an offering to the goddess they were trying to resurrect. Outside, a portal opened, and as her ship floated out to sea, it was revealed that she was using the abandoned 3rd Assault Garden as her base. A few hours later, the instructor summoned Reselia's squad to inform them that her drones had captured images of a 3rd Assault Garden that had unexpectedly appeared. She explained that the ship was heading toward them and mentioned that they had received 2 distress signals. The instructor indicated that these signals might suggest the presence of survivors on board, but they wouldn't know for sure until they investigated. She assigned the platoon a simple mission: search for survivors and disable the ship's engines. They needed to complete the mission within 72 hours, as exceeding that time frame would prevent the 7th Assault Garden from withdrawing, which would result in a collision with the 3rd Assault Garden. The platoon accepted the mission, but Reselia questioned why the instructor had chosen them for this task. The instructor admitted it was because Reselia and Regina came from there, but also said they believed in their abilities as a team. Reselia thanked her for her honesty and tried to suggest they leave Leonis off the mission, but he protested. The next day, while the girls were gathering on the flight deck, Leonis met with Blackus and Sherry. He tasked Blackus with keeping watch over the city in his absence and ordered Sherry to accompany him. Sometime after they departed for their mission, Regina grew bored, so she asked Leonis to lie down on her lap so she could clean his ears. While doing so, Leonis fell asleep and dreamed of the past when Roselia told him she would soon disappear from the world. Leonis thought she was joking, but she assured him she wasn't and said he would be reincarnated in 1,000 years. She told him his mission as her loyal servant was to find her in her new body, but made him promise he would do something if she ended up becoming something else. Leonis woke up before she could tell him what to do, and was surprised to find himself in Reselia's lap, not Regina's. Elfine soon informed them they had arrived, and after the plane landed, everyone disembarked. Reselia then instructed Regina, Sakuya, and Elfine to pinpoint the exact location from which the distress signal had originated. She mentioned that she and Leonis would head to the power plant to shut it down, but Elfine insisted on sending one of her drones with them. When the group split up, Leonis ordered Sherry to accompany the girls and watch over them in case of emergency. Although the demon maid wasn't happy with this task, she had no choice but to obey her master's orders. Shortly after, Leonis and Reselia were attacked by a void, and Reselia was trapped under a lamppost. Meanwhile, a few minutes before the plane landed, an elf named Arla suddenly appeared in another part of the abandoned city. She had been sent there from the past and was confused as to why the place was like this. However, she found some clothes and, after dressing, went to inspect the area. While doing this, she saw the plane and watched in confusion and amazement as it landed. She was so distracted by the sight that she didn't notice Nephekes appear behind her until he spoke. Startled, Arla turned to look at him, and he told her it was an honor to be in the presence of the great elven hero himself. Hearing this, Arla became defensive and cautiously asked if he too was from the past. Ignoring her question, Nephekes introduced himself and said he knew she was there to destroy the goddess's vessel. His words made her suspicious of him, so she considered him an enemy and tried to attack him, but he vanished. The next moment, a void appeared behind her, so she turned her attention to it, preparing to fight. At the same time, Reselia and Leonis were also under attack, so Leonis used his darkness. The void attacked him with a spell, destroying Elfine's drone in the process, but Leonis was unharmed thanks to his barrier. When he tried to retaliate, the void defended itself with a barrier, making him realize it was mimicking an angel. This realization prompted him to try a high-level spell because the void kept countering the low-level ones. Elfine and the others heard the explosions, and when Elfine confirmed that her drone had been destroyed, Regina suggested they head toward Leonis' location. The void continued attacking and countering all of Leonis' spells, but he managed to defeat it using a fireball spell and a lightning spell. With the void gone, he rushed to see Reselia, who assured him that everything was fine until she tried to stand and discovered that her legs were affected. Leonis told her not to worry and said that her vampire abilities would heal her, though it would take some time. He suggested finding a place where they could remain discreet until she healed, but as he spoke, he noticed some figures approaching them. He immediately tried to attack, but Reselia stopped him, saying that her scanner wasn't detecting any signals. As the figures drew closer, they were revealed to be ghosts, and Reselia recognized the crest on their clothing as belonging to her family. William, who appeared to be the group's leader, asked if they had come because they had received their distress signals. Confused as to why the ghosts were sending distress signals, Reselia asked what their purpose was, and William explained that they had wanted to warn them. He said that a Void Lord had taken up residence in the power plant and merged with the mana crystal, and once it finished absorbing all the crystal's energy, it giant would awaken. Reselia told him they needed to confirm if their story was true because no one would believe them if they said the ghosts had given them the information. She said that if they gathered evidence of the Void Lord's presence, they could convince those who had returned home to evacuate. William promised they would help her gather evidence, but suggested she go with them to his family's estate and stay there until she was fully recovered. When they reached the surface, Reselia was surprised to find that the ghost had sent a limousine to pick her up. Leonis thought this was impressive, but decided to summon his skeletal horses to pull the limousine to its destination because he wanted to get there faster. Meanwhile, the others encountered Arle, and mistaking them for Nephekes's accomplices, she challenged them to a fight. Sakuya accepted her challenge, and after fighting for a few minutes, she overpowered the elf. However, he acknowledged that his victory was due to Arle being injured. It turned out the elf had been seriously wounded while fighting the Void and was only pretending to be unharmed. Back in the limousine, Reselia asked for her daily dose of blood, and Leonis didn't hesitate to offer her his neck. After she had sucked on it for a while and still hadn't pulled away, Leonis told himself that if he didn't stop her, he would be exhausted. The next moment, Elfini, who had been trying to catch up with them, finally did, so Reselia stepped aside to talk to her. She reassured the worried girl that they were fine and informed her that they were heading to her family's estate. She said they would wait there until Elfine and the others arrived so they could all go together to investigate the power plant. Elfine agreed, but said they would leave after treating Arle's wounds, so Reselia asked who she was, and Elfine told her they suspected she was a survivor. After the girls hung up, Leonis gave Reselia a dress that amplified her powers each time she wore it. Using her magic, she molded the dress to Reselia's body and told her that if she wanted to wear it, all she had to do was imagine herself in it. Still in the spirit of giving, Leonis gave Reselia 3 skeleton keychains, saying they were good luck charms. At the mall, the girls were holed up, and Regina finished treating Arle before beginning the interrogation. First, Sakuya gave him a new shirt and then asked his name, since they'd never had time for introductions. Arle answered and apologized for attacking them, but the girls assured him it was all water under the bridge. From where she stood, Elfine said she couldn't find Arle's name in the 3rd Assault Garden's database. When she started questioning Arle's presence on the ship, the elf turned the question back on them. Elfine replied that they were there to investigate possible void activity in the abandoned city. Arle didn't understand what she meant, but decided not to stress about it since it wasn't her concern. However, she told them she was also on a mission, explaining that her mission was to kill a goddess and stop her resurrection. But she refused to say who had assigned her the mission or where she came from. When she tried to leave, her stomach growled, so Sakuya offered her some snacks and suggested she rest for a while. Reselia and Leonis arrived at her family estate, where Reselia wandered around the grounds of the ruined mansion, lost in memories. Meanwhile, Leonis sat downstairs cleaning a bone. When Reselia entered what remained of her father's study, a wave of sadness washed over her, and she began to cry. To comfort her, the guards conjured up an illusion of the past, where her father sat with her in the study, reading the story of the Demon King. The tale described a cruel demon king who resided in a castle made of bones. His tyranny provoked God's wrath, leading God to empower a hero and send him to defeat the Demon King. After the Demon King's defeat, the people celebrated the hero, and they all lived happily ever after. When her father finished the story, he told her there was more than the book said, and Reselia begged him to tell her more. The illusion soon faded, and Reselia was back in the ruined room, but this time, Nephekes was in the room with her. When Reselia asked him if he was a survivor, he became enraged and attacked her with a high-level spell. The spell knocked her unconscious, and she began to dream of the last time she saw her father. It was the night of the 3rd assault when the garden fell to the voids, and little Reselia begged him to take her with him, but he refused. He said the battlefield was no place for a child, and asked her to go to the shelter with Regina and the others. The last thing he told her before leaving was the story of the Demon King, and how he believed the Demon King would appear when the world needed him to defeat the voids. The next moment she awoke, and, to her shock, found 3 skeletons standing before her. It turned out they were the reason Nephekes's spell hadn't seriously harmed her. Nephekes was equally surprised to see the skeletons, and began to wonder if he had misjudged Reselia. He had attacked her because he assumed she was human, but now that the skeletons were there, he wondered if she wasn't just an ordinary human. He tried to attack her again with another spell, but Leonis appeared just then and countered it. Her fireball spell struck the unsuspecting Nephekes, and as he fell, Leonis went to check on Reselia. Reselia assured him she was unharmed, but asked if she could also see the skeletons because she was beginning to suspect she had a concussion. Leonis told the confused girl that the skeletons were the Lucky Charm keychains he had given her in the limousine. Taking this as a cue, the skeletons, who turned out to be complete idiots, introduced themselves individually, but said that the 3 of them were known as the 3 Warriors of Rognus. They told her that they were the ones who defended her from Nephekes's first attack. However, they soon began arguing about who had defended her first. At that moment, Nephekes rose from his position on the ground and praised Leonis for being able to take him down. As he spoke, Leonis watched him closely and was shocked as he recognized Nephekes as the servant of one of the Demon Kings who had fallen to the heroes. He wondered why Nephekes was there, as he believed Nephekes had died with his master during the war 1,000 years ago. When Nephekes attempted to attack Reselia again, Leonis used an ice spell to counter his fire spell spell, after which he asked Nephikes what he was doing there. Nephikes didn't have a chance to answer because the entire place began to shake, and he started laughing maniacally. He then said that the holy terrace had fulfilled its purpose and was now a vessel for the goddess, prompting Leonis to ask which goddess he meant. Nephikes refused to say and opened a portal, but before leaving, he told them that the world was destined to collapse at the goddess's hands. After the portal closed, the tremors began again, and Leonis saw the symbol of the holy order glowing in the sky. Before she could process what was happening, the skeletons urged them to leave the building. Once outside, they saw the giant remains of Terrace rising from the power plant. William explained that she was the Lord of the Void they had been warned about. As they watched, the Void angels surrounding her began chanting the Holy Order's anthem. When Terrace started to move, the angels swooped down and attacked Leonis and the others, but they managed to fight back. Unfortunately, each void they destroyed regenerated due to Terrace's regenerative abilities, making things increasingly difficult for them. However, Leonis ordered the group to crush the voids' heads. At the same time, the voids attacked the girls in kind until Elphine analyzed the situation and realized their heads were their weakness. She then sent her drones to locate a vehicle they could use to reach Riselia and Leonis. Once they found one, the four of them rushed toward it. Meanwhile, Riselia and the skeletons continued crushing the voids' heads, but Leonis decided it was time to eliminate Terrace and end the chaos. He cast a high-level fire spell, as hot as the sun, but despite its intensity, Terrace remained unharmed due to her regenerative abilities. In retaliation for what he had done, Terrace unleashed an 11th level spell that burned everything it touched, including the voids. Leonis protected his party with a barrier of equal level, and when the destruction ceased, he removed it. He then ordered Riselia and the skeletons to stand guard while he prepared to face Terrace. He drew his demonic sword and hovered in the air, hoping to improve his chances of striking Terrace with Ragnalost. However, as he focused on his attack, he heard Roselia's voice, coming from inside Terrace's body. She asked him if he truly intended to kill her with the sword she had given him, leaving Leonis bewildered as to how he could be inside a Void Lord. Frustrated, he unleashed the power of his sword, but Terrace absorbed the attack and retaliated with magical arrows. The arrows struck everything in sight, including Leonis, causing him to collapse to the ground. Riselia tried to rush to his side, but hesitated when she saw Terrace preparing for another level 11 spell. After struggling with what to do, Riselia finally activated the dress Leonis had given her. Using her blood as a power source, she sent a slash toward Terrace, which struck her and knocked her to the ground. Riselia then rushed to Leonis' side as skeletons protected them and discovered he was dying. Leonis weakly asked Riselia to leave, but she refused and pressed her bloodied hand against his wound, beginning to transfer blood to it. As she did so, Leonis' past flashed through his mind, and he finally remembered what Riselia had told him that day. She had said that if he ever found her in the future and she was someone else, she wanted him to kill her with his demonic sword. Leonis replied that he couldn't keep such a promise, so he told her that he should make sure to find her true self. The next moment, Leonis opened his eyes and declared that the false goddess would die by his sword. He thanked Riselia for saving his life and asked her for a piece of her dress, which he used to magically repair his damaged shirt. At that moment, Terrace began to rise, so the Demon King informed his subordinate that he wanted to be rid of her for good this time. However, he needed some help in the form of mana, because using the sword the first time had drained most of his mana. Hearing this, William and the other ghosts approached him and asked him to convert their souls into a power source. They also asked him to use the souls of all those who died on the day of the stampede and were still trapped there, as his own souls alone wouldn't be enough. Observing the ghosts, Leonis realized that it was Terrace's resurrection abilities that had given them astral forms. When Leonis still remained silent, William begged him to grant them this final wish, and Leonis assured him he would. However, as he began gathering the other souls, he told William he had a job for him and his friends. He then summoned some skeletons and merged their souls with his own so they could stand with Riselia and fight for the first and last time. His instruction to Riselia was to lead them into battle and hold off the voids until he had gathered all the souls to defeat Terrace. Across town, Elphine pushed the bikes to their limits, and Arla asked them to let her go with them, saying she had a duty to fulfill. The girls were against it since she was injured, but Sakuya convinced them to let her come with them. On the way, Elphine took control of Regina's bike using one of her drones, so the princess could attack the voids trying to approach. Arlie and Sakuya also helped fight the voids as the bikes headed toward the power plant. On Riselia's side, she and the skeletons fought the voids, but Tiaris tried to intervene by casting another level 11 spell. When Riselia saw this, she grabbed Leonis and flew off to prevent her from getting hurt, telling her she needed a few more minutes. While she was finishing the soul collection process, Elphine and her girls noticed that the road was destroyed. They considered turning back, but Elphine felt reckless, so she kept driving and jumped the gap. As soon as they reached the other side, a void suddenly appeared and tried to attack them. Fortunately, Sherry was still watching them, so she made a quick appearance and took it out for them. By then, Leonis had finished gathering the souls and began absorbing their energy into his sword, catching Terrace's attention. She tried to stop him by throwing a building at him, but Riselia sliced it in half before it could get close. When the sword was ready, Terrace erected a high-grade protective barrier around her body because she knew what was coming. Leonis began to worry that her barrier barrier was hindering her plans, but she didn't stop and prepared to strike with Ragnalost. At the same time, the girls approached Terrace from behind, and Arlie infused her holy sword with her mana. Regina and Sakuya also readied their holy swords, and when they were close enough, they simultaneously unleashed the power of their weapons on Terrace. The combined firepower of Regina and Sakuya weakened the barrier, allowing Arlie's attack to strike Terrace, forcing her to drop the barrier completely. As Terrace clutched her side in pain, Leonis became distracted and wondered who was powerful enough to hit her and cause her harm. However, when Terrace turned to face him, she began to hear Roselia's voice once more, remembered her mission, and unleashed Ragnalost upon her. As she burned, Arlie fainted, and Roselia heard her father's voice telling her that the Demon King would return and rid the world of the voids. After Terrace's complete annihilation, the ship stopped moving and all the voids vanished. William and the other ghosts said their goodbyes to Roselia, and she asked them to say hello to her family for her. After the ghosts left, Regina and the others appeared, and Roselia happily ran to them. After she and Regina hugged, Leonis joined them and, to her surprise, saw Sakuya carrying an unconscious Arlie. Not wanting the girls to suspect anything was wrong, he controlled his facial expressions and said nothing, though his mind was troubled. He continued trying to make sense of the elf hero's presence in the future as the girls waved to the plane that was coming to take them home. This thought wouldn't leave his mind, and on the way home, Roselia noticed his preoccupation and asked what was wrong. Leonis replied that there was nothing wrong and quickly changed the subject, asking what book he was reading. She told him it was the fairy tale book her father used to read to her about a demon king and the hero who defeated him. To pass the time, she told him part of the story, and Leonis argued that they were all inaccurate. Roselia asked him how he knew, and he said it was simply his interpretation of the story. However, he made a mental note to read the book, as it was the only thing available at the time that mentioned him, even though it was all lies. When he turned his attention back to Roselia, she told him he reminded her of the Demon King from the story, which shocked him. Later, Leonis told Blackus what had happened in the third assault garden, and Blackus was shocked to learn that Nephekes had been there. He was also shocked to learn that Nephekes was behind Tearis's resurrection as the vessel for the false Roselia. Leonis told him he was certain Nephekes would reappear, and said that when he did, he would make him reveal everything he knew. Sherry then reminded Leonis about Arla and warned him to be careful not to let her discover him, as the woman possessed excellent deductive skills. Leonis told her he would and ordered her to follow Arle until she learned why the elf was in that time period. Roselia entered the room the next moment, and the maid and the wolf quickly vanished. Fortunately, Roselia hadn't seen them, so she turned her attention to Leonis. She asked if she could get him a mana refill, and he agreed. Hours later, Arle awoke in the infirmary, and when she realized she was still in the future, she concluded that her mission was not yet complete. As quietly as possible, she left her bed, located her sword, and then ruined all her stealth efforts by blasting a hole in the wall to escape. The sudden explosion set off the alarms, and when Leonis heard it, she looked out her window and wondered if there would ever be a day when things weren't so noisy. If you've watched this far and enjoyed the video, you can watch the next one. See you in the next video.